Hey guys, what's up? Alex Scott here with Consordini.com, and thank you so much for checking out another studio gear review. Today we are going to be taking a look at the Audient ASP800 8-channel ADAT preamp. Now, I use this piece of gear every day. I actually own two of them, so I have 16 channels of these pre's, and I use them every day primarily as my drum preamps. If you're a home studio or a project studio and you need to record a drum kit, you're going to need a lot of inputs, given that guys, I personally use between 7 and 10 mics on the kit. I know guys who use upwards of 16 on a regular basis. I even heard that on one of the more modern Rush records, they used 43 microphones on Neil Peart's kit. So drums are very input intensive. You do need a lot of channels in order to do it. And these preamps, these Audient ASP800s, give you a pretty affordable and incredibly high quality option to add 8 or 16 or even 24 extra channels of inputs onto your interface if your interface is ADAT compatible. They do also have analog outputs, so you can run them just as 16 analog channels, but I use them over ADAT or light pipe because that means I can connect with one very simple, very small cable to the back of my Antelope Orion interface and immediately port in, 8 from each unit over ADAT, port in 16 channels of fabulous, clean, transparent, sweet sounding pre's. But that's not all the ASP800s have to offer. Audient is a newer company. I believe they're British, and they are mainly manufacturers of large format analog recording consoles. They're one of the only companies left doing really modern, cool, innovative stuff with large format recording consoles. And these preamps are identical, part for part, circuit for circuit, to the ones they offer in their huge, large format consoles that cost $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and some fabulous records have been made on these consoles. I mean, they just sound wonderful. They're not like a Neve or an API or something like that where it has a lot of character and transformer saturation and stuff. They are definitely preamps in the very clean and fast and sweet and transparent variety, which I really, really like on drums. It just gives you a great neutral sound to start off with, and if you want to add any, saturation or, harmonic distortion or anything like that, you can do so after the fact. And that's all 16 channels are that way. However, another cool thing that these preamps have is what they call HMX and iron, which is on the first 2 channels of each preamp. So I have 4 channels of these. Their vintage channel, or I can't remember exactly what their kind of marketing name for them is. But what it is on the first 2 channels, you have 2 additional knobs, and we'll see them in a second when we actually take a look at the front of the unit. But they are they're options for adding that saturation or adding a little bit of harmonic distortion back to your signal. So there's HMX, which uses a MOSFET or a JFET circuit to kind of emulate what a tube would do. They don't actually have any tubes in them, but it saturates the low end of your signal. And you can sweep it all the way through. It starts at sweet, and then you can turn it all the way up to thick, which is, I love the descriptors they have on the front panel. But it basically just gives you some beefy warmth down in your low mids, a little bit of extra richness. And then the other one is they call magnetic drive or iron, which is basically just a transformer, again, only on the first 2 channels. And the more you bring that in, it's going to saturate more of your top end and lend more of a transformer saturation type sound to the signal. So I find it really reminiscent of like a Neve-ish kind of sound. It gives you the crispiness in the top end kind of a thing, which is how I always envision Neves to sound. And so with those 2 knobs, you can dial in basically how much of each kind of saturation you want. If you want something that sounds a little bit more rich and tubey, or if you want something that sounds a little bit more, classic transformer-y. So let's go ahead and, like I said, pull the camera around, take a look at the front of one of these units, and listen to some drums being played through them so you guys can get an idea of just how fast and clean and transparent these preamps sound. Okay guys, so here are our Audient ASP800 8-channel ADAT preamps. Like I said, I have 2 of them, got them racked up here. I'm just going to go over the features real quick, and then we have a sound file for you guys to take a listen to on the drums. So obviously, like I was saying, you have these 2 first kind of more vintage style channels that have this, fat saturation and transformer saturation options on them. So you've got your input gain here, phase versus pad, 48 volt phantom, as you would expect, and then you have in and out switches for your HMX, the kind of tube quote unquote style saturation, and then you have this iron switch here for the transformer saturation. And you have identical controls to those on the first two. You also have DI inputs on the first two in case you want to use it as a bass DI or a guitar DI or DI for anything else for that matter. And I've found that this low end, kind of lower end tube saturation thing on bass sounds awesome. As a bass DI, run direct into that and then dial that into taste. Really helps to give a bass guitar really nice girthy lows. And then the other channels are a little bit more stripped back. You just have input monitoring, obviously your gain knob, and phantom, and then pad. But if I had to get rid of some of the kind of typical controls you would see on a preamp, like impedance selection or something like that. If I had to only pick two buttons, I would pick phantom and then pad. Because I'm using these for drums, having a pad switch is really, really, really critical for tom mics, kick mics, snare drum mics. And you can see I've got a number of the pads engaged on for recording drums on these. So that's, some companies will put other options here. They might have a phase invert or something, but to me it's a whole lot easier to invert phase in my DAW as opposed to trying, you can't really pad your input signal in the DAW to the preamp. That just doesn't work. If it's too loud, it's too loud and it's going to clip your preamp. Whereas phase invert and some of this other stuff, you can add after the fact in your DAW, or do after the fact in your DAW. So I really, really like that. I think they picked a good feature set here. And then on the very far right, we just have some sample rate information. These can clock over ADAT. They do have pretty good internal clocks, but I use BNC connectors, proper word clock to sync them with my Antelope Orion, and they're rock solid. I've never had a single issue with that, and they do have BNC in and out jacks on the back for your clocking needs. So now we're going to go ahead and play back a sound file of some drums that I recorded through these preamps so you guys can just get an idea of what the overall neutral sound of them is. Okay guys, so there you have it, the Audient ASP800 8-channel ADAT preamp. These things are great. They're fabulous utility preamps. If you just need a lot of really good high quality channels for doing things like drums or even just generally recording a full band, it's a fabulous and really reasonably priced solution, especially given the quality. They are very clean, they are very transparent, until you bring in that saturation on the first two channels, as you guys heard. But they just sound really high quality, and that's, preamps can be really colored, they can sound vintage, they can have tubes in them, they can do all of these things and kind of sculpt your tone, and that's very desirable to a lot of people. A lot of guys really love that vintage vibe, and that's cool, but it's not always the best bet. And, a lot of times, especially with how amazing plugins and, mix technology is these days, a lot of times I just want to hit my DAW with a really clean, simple, natural sounding signal. And that's exactly what these provide. It's also really cool to have such incredibly high quality preamps from such a great console manufacturer. Normally you think of big, large format recording consoles as being really expensive, and one of the reasons people usually like big consoles like that is because of the preamps. So Audient, being a well-known console manufacturer, has taken these great preamps from these huge, expensive consoles and packaged them in a format that's really accessible to people like myself and I'm sure you guys out there watching. So it's just, overall, it's a fabulous product. There's great options across the whole thing. They retail, I think, for $7.99. I want to say around $800. I got mine secondhand for a little bit less than that. I think I picked up the pair for right around $1,400 or $1,500. But yeah, I use them every day and highly recommend them if you just need some extra raw, high quality, clean channels to add a little bit more flexibility and capability to your recording setup. But what do you guys think? Have you used Audient preamps? Have you used, they make interfaces and of course the large consoles that I've been talking about. Have you used any of Audient's gear? How do you think it sounds? We would love to hear any thoughts or opinions you guys have in the comments down below. Again, my name is Alex Scott with Consordini.com. Thank you guys so much for watching another one of our gear reviews, and we will see you in the next video.